It is believed that a number of massive hacks have been perpetrated by a China military espionage unit called Unit 61398, which has 100,000 members and is known for stealing trade secrets and IP from companies such as Westinghouse and U.S. Steel. In 2015, American health insurer Anthem was hacked, and the personal records of nearly 80 million Americans were compromised. And China is the primary suspect. In that same year, the U.S. Government Office of Personnel Management, OPM, was hacked and 21.5 million records were stolen, including confidential background checks. Information specifically targeted included names, social security numbers, dates, and places of birth. Other sources of information for Chinese government databases on U.S. citizens include hacks of U.S. airlines such as United, hotels such as Marriott, and recently I've read reports of employment sites being used to gather data on Americans. All this data together allows the Chinese government to build a complete picture of the behavior, preferences, and vulnerabilities of hundreds of millions of Americans. Getting back to TikTok, in addition to stealing personal data, experts say that videos and photo sharing aspects of TikTok would allow China to train its facial recognition capabilities. The type of AI China is working on goes way beyond facial recognition, but also does voice recognition and gait recognition, being able to pick someone out of a crowd by the way they walk. Because China's population is more than 90% Han Chinese, the AI does not have the opportunity to practice on different ethnicities. But the U.S. multicultural population would be a goldmine for them. One of the concerns is that China could use images, videos, and other data from social media posts to compile profiles of our military personnel, which China could then use to program their autonomous weapons. China's social credit score was implemented along with widespread cameras and information networks, which allow the Chinese government to keep tabs on citizens and visitors, to know their habits, associates, and activities. The coronavirus has helped them step up their data gathering efforts, as many subway stations in China have implemented an AI fever screening system developed by Megyi, an AI company founded by graduates of Tsinghua University. The same system can be used for surveillance and intelligence gathering. In 2019, China implemented laws restricting the collection and use of genetic and DNA samples from Chinese citizens. Meanwhile, in Xinjiang, the Chinese province, which is home to the Uyghur Muslims, the Chinese government has implemented wide-sweeping efforts to gather blood and other biomaterials to begin sequencing DNA, which, along with advanced facial recognition software, will allow them to keep tighter tabs on their citizens, but ultimately can be used against Americans and other foreigners whose data China has. The process is called DNA phenotyping, and this means that if they have your blood, hair, skin, or in some way if they have your DNA, the computer can use the information to produce a photo of you. So far, the photos they're generating are not very detailed, but it's obvious that the system will continue to improve, becoming more and more accurate. The New York Times reported that China's Ministry of Public Security and at least 2 Chinese scientists working with the ministry on DNA phenotyping technology have received funding from respected institutions in Europe. International scientific journals have published their findings without examining the origin of the DNA used in the studies or vetting the ethical questions raised by collecting such samples in Xinjiang. Under international standards and codes of ethics, the blood or DNA material should have been gained voluntarily from the suspects. This means normally if you're going to take someone's blood or DNA and you're going to use it in a study, that person has to sign a declaration which says, I give this freely, I'm aware that you're using it for the study, you have my permission. This was not done in Xinjiang. Human Rights Watch discovered that the blood and other biosamples were taken as part of a mandatory health check upon arrival in Xinjiang Muslim detention camps, and that the subjects were not free to refuse. By stealing blood and tissue from the 1.5 million Uyghur Muslims in detention camps, Beijing is building manhunting technology. Combining DNA with facial recognition, they will soon be able to map faces by ethnicity. According to Human Rights Watch, a U.S. biotechnology company based out of Massachusetts called Thermo Fisher Scientific supplied Xinjiang authorities with some of the DNA sequences used in the data collection efforts. Every time the plane lands in China, foreigners have to have fingerprints taken, photo taken, and of course, present their passport and say where they're going. Each night that you reside in the People's Republic of China, your lodging has to be registered with the police. This means that China already has our faces, our fingerprints, and travel habits. All they need now is our DNA. In addition to Uyghur DNA, China is believed to have the largest database in the world with more than 80 million DNA profiles. NPR reported that U.S. top technology university MIT collaborated with a Chinese company called iFlyTech to create voice recognition technology to be used in Xinjiang. The same report said that a Yale professor working on a DNA project to identify people by ethnicity collaborated with Chinese scientists from Chinese Ministry of Public Security for over a year in a laboratory where they shared DNA samples. China has the samples and data they obtained from the American who has had the great honor of furthering the scientific knowledge of the Communist Party of China. In February 2020, Attorney General William Barr announced that the U.S. had charged 4 Chinese military hackers for the Equifax hack, which netted them the data of 500 million Marriott Hotel guests. Attorney General Barr and cyber experts blamed China's Ministry of State Security for many of the largest hacks. But in the case of Equifax, the culprits were People's Liberation Army officers guilty of economic espionage. In similar cases of industrial espionage, the U.S. Justice Department has previously charged China with trying to steal high-tech trade secrets. The outcome so far of the TikTok controversy is that all branches of U.S. military have banned soldiers from using TikTok on government phones. As for Huawei, after the U.S. blocked Huawei and ZTE under the National Defense Authorization Act, Huawei took the U.S. government to court. In the end, U.S. District Judge Amos Mazant ruled in favor of the United States, finding that Congress had acted appropriately under the Defense Authorization Act. And so the story continues. I'm Dr. Antonio Graceffo, and this has been China Economic Research. I have 3 books about the Chinese economy, which you can get on Amazon.com. I also have one on Chinese wrestling and other martial arts. You can follow me on Twitter to learn more about the Chinese economy, Mongolian economy, martial arts, and wrestling, and also old TV shows and Marvel Comics. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, and please subscribe to the channel. I'm Dr. Antonio Graceffo. See you next time on China Economic Research.